we'll start.
All right, okay, so we're on to our agenda.
Okay. All right, so just kind of scrolling through here, first section, presentation, introduction of the proposed Uptown Landing project. This is the developers coming in, just kind of introduce the project. There's absolutely zero action on this. For this particular project, this is a very large project that I was having a conversation yesterday. I think the original concept of this, we started in 2014. So this is 7 years in the making to get it to this point. So it's very exciting in the area adjacent to Blue Heron Park, but there would be no rezoning request or anything at all like that, assuming the town board approves the form-based code, because it's a form-based code development. So it's just to kind of introduce it and get the ball rolling there. Okay, so the next resolution is proposed text code amendment pertaining to form-based code. So the Ontario County Planning Board provided a number of comments for us relating to form-based code. And we just received those on Monday. And I asked Bergman to take a look at those comments from the County Planning Board and respond to us relative to the comments. I think generally there were some of the comments from the county planning probably were because they have not been involved and maybe just don't understand because it's been such a long process going forward. But there were some comments in it that, you know, is, and like, I'll give you an example of that. They said, should signs be added to the list of accessory uses? We specifically said we weren't doing that intentionally so that that's regulated separately.
So they missed it.
So they just, you know, that type of stuff. But there were also some questions in there that were interesting. And it's like, okay, should we be thinking about that? So another set of eyes. So that's why I asked Bergman to go through this list of, and really kudos, there's 40 different comments that the county made. Kudos to the county for making them and taking the time to do it. I think it's very helpful. And really, I think we need the feedback from Bergman relative to those 40 comments to see kind of where we go if we incorporate some of that or not. But at least knowing that we've taken a hard look at their comments, I think we should do that. So
Yeah, so we'll bump it one more week and then we bump the resolution one more week as well, or month, sorry.
Right, exactly. Yep. Which actually, in a second, I'll explain why I think that actually probably works out really good doing it that way. Proposed text code amendment relative to the digital signage. So that is ready to go at this point for the digital signs. The one on 332, the one on 5 and 20. We have a tentative agreement. Actually, I'll forward it to you by email today. We have a tentative agreement on the settlement. We've made a ton of progress since the last town board meeting and really been pushing. There's a couple little things. For instance, I think generally for the 5 and 20 sign, like for instance, a height of 25 feet. They've agreed to that. I don't see that's reasonable and everything. I'm trying to get them to lower the height of the sign on 332 a little bit. Currently, that sign is about 9 feet off the ground. They said that that is the absolute minimum that they could do, 9 feet off the ground, from the top of the ground to the bottom of the digital display, 9 feet. And then the sign itself, one document they told me it was 11 feet. Another document it says it's 12 feet with the
Frame.
Right. So I was trying to get a 20-foot height max on that sign. And then Jim Newton, who is Lamar regional guy, he said we can agree to 22 feet. But then when the attorneys sent it back over to us, it had 27 feet. So there's still some little nuances like that. But in terms of like the sign rotation, the 4x4 28-day runs, they're good with all that. Giving us the default if the thing isn't sold, that's all spelled out in the agreement. We just got the agreement. So I'll forward that to you guys. That's probably stuff you'll want to talk about in executive session. So I don't know how you want to go about that. If you want to, you know, look at it ahead of time and then give us direction in executive session and then move forward with the digital signage legislation, or if you want to pause and go into executive session and come back out of executive session and then discuss the resolution and the local law, that's up to you guys, however you want to handle that, but,
I feel like when we make executive sessions in the middle of the meeting, people look, I mean, it looks like we're doing something a little on the sneaky, you know what I mean? Like, oh, why can't we talk about it live? And so from my personal opinion, it's better for us to have the regular executive session at the end and then maybe bump it to the next meeting if we had to. So
Well, you
that-
can come out of executive session and then take action,
Oh, that's another option. Yeah,
you know. Usually we say.
we're
won't
not
take any
going
action
to, but
afterwards,
yeah. But,
There's been times when we have though.
well, and we
you know,
could say,
so-
we're gonna review the agreement and we may take
Yeah.
action on this particular thing afterward, you know,
Yeah,
not just
we
to
may
be
or may-
very
yeah.
upfront.
so maybe what you want to do is open the public hearing, entertain any comments, close the public hearing.
Right,
And then when you get to the resolution, maybe you want to do that at the end of the agenda after the executive session.
right. We could postpone that till afterward. That would be a little more transparent. But I hate the thought of in the middle of a meeting, bumping everybody out, asking everyone back, you know what I mean? It just seems really clunky, so it's easier at the end. Sounds good for me. Any thoughts, Kathy? If you do, you have to speak up.
Yes,
But
no,
I
I'm here. I just didn't want to
Okay,
interrupt.
You did not weigh in if you felt like you wanted to.
I know Kathy.
I think, I'm sorry.
I just said, I know you want to see the agreement too. I'll get that out to you guys.
Right. I have to see it to see how much I think needs to be discussed.
Is
At
there
this
any
point, I
reason-
think,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, is there any reason why the signs can't both be the same height limit?
I don't know that we want 25 feet on 332, to be 100% honest.
So why do we want it on 5 and 20 then?
Because that's about what it is currently on 5
Oh,
and 20. It's
I
just,
see.
it's a shorter sign on 330.
Okay, all right.
I was trying to push to get it a little shorter,
Mm.
because without that cupola thing on the top and all that stuff.
That takes away some.
I'm sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say before I can say, if we can, I guess we could go in agree to go in executive session at the end of the meeting. And if we're ready to come back in and make a decision, we can do that. Otherwise, we can come back in executive session and put it off to another time as well. So
Right, you
I
could
think that
always-
would make the most sense.
Yeah, you could always table the resolution.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to warn you that nobody's up yet except me and my husband. As people start to wake up, I'll probably mute myself, and then I don't think I can unmute myself. So, right, Doug?
I did be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, just so you know. All right, I could do that.
And then the final public hearing is on the comprehensive plan. And as far as I know, at this point, you're ready to go. If the board's ready to adopt the comprehensive plan, that should be ready.
Didn't you guys already hold that public hearing? You just closed it?
We continued.
These are continued. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, then new public hearings. The first new public hearing is on the conservation subdivision. Same as the form-based code, the county got back to us with a number of comments that I've asked Barb Johnson from Labella to go through and just review those. So I'm suggesting that you might want to hold off one meeting on that. Now that gets a little tricky because Terry, as you know, we've discussed a couple of developments
Mhm.
and there really is a dire need to get this conservation subdivision approved. But
Oh,
it's,
What was the nature of their comments? I mean,
here, let me pull it up.
because strictly speaking, we don't have to do that. You can pass it with a super majority. You don't need to,
Did they deny it or just bring it back with comments?
I
well, they had comments.
I think it's-
We haven't seen them, so.
Ordinance.
They're down there, right there.
Staff comments here, there. So class 2, so you don't even need a super majority, so
Oh, okay.
you're good on that, but the comments. And again, some of this is, I don't know if it's something you want to pertain to or not. I did ask Barb Johnson to be ready at this meeting in case you wanted to discuss this or have other questions, but how would the conservation subdivision properly or provision apply to subdivision of land for non-residential uses for development of fourplex residential development not requiring subdivisional lots. Well, truthfully, we don't allow that, so I don't, that comment, I think is, you know, not really pertaining to that. So consider rewriting C3B regarding exemption from conservation subdivision to refer to parent lots as date of adoption of the law with small areas of conservation value unconnected to other constrained or priority conservation assets or potential trail corridors. I think what they're suggesting is that way there's a definitive date relative to the mapping. We don't usually put that in law, but as applicability of conservation subdivision regulations may often hinge regarding natural land cover types included as conservation, the town may want to further define ecological types that are not considered natural. But we've done that. That's all around this room. So the provisions requiring land with prime soils or soils so importance to be farmland for the past 2 years to be considered a conservation asset leaves valuable agricultural land vulnerable to development and farm operations constrained in their attempts to lease land. At a minimum, the provision should recognize farmland left fallow as part of a farm management plan as farmed. Referring body may also want to include valuable soils in the town identified agricultural protection areas priority conservation asset regardless of farm status. So basically what they're suggesting is in the conservation subdivision regulations, it particularly kicks into the NRI analysis if the farm has been actively operated in the past 2 years. That's one of the provision that kicks it into an NRI analysis. What the county is saying is we should take out that 2 years and just say if it's farmland, even if it's fallow farmland and it's grown up with scrub brush, it should still kick into the NRI. That's more of a policy decision. That's up to the town board if you want to do that. Thank
So
you.
can I ask you what you're reading from, and do we have a copy?
I'm
of that?
sorry, you're not gonna be able to see this, Kathy. I've got it on another screen here in the room.
Okay,
Sorry, it's the county comments. It is attached to the agenda. If
okay. I just hadn't gotten a chance to see that all, but that's okay. I have that.
Okay. Referring bodies should consider further defining extent of land related to scenic landscapes, recreational resources, land provide. I mean, again, that's all the stuff around this room. We've been doing that. That's all in the NRI. So that I don't know that's pertinent. Referring body may want to require land area for stormwater management to be set aside in the base density conventional subdivision sketch plan calculations, the number of residents permitted. Well, so, and that's where, again, I think probably there's a disconnect with them not being involved. We specifically said constrained lands would not include like the stormwater and that sort of thing, requiring the developer to have additional open space essentially, or stormwater management, and that constrains lands like steep slopes not be included in those calculations so that it really protects that natural resource such as steep slopes and is not included in that. For ease of reference, consider defining the fourplex as a dwelling type in code. Again, I don't know where that piece is coming from, the fourplex thing. Referring bodies should consider whether to include any standards or findings requirements to guide planning board waiver of conserved land standards and whether such guidance should differ for waiver of priority conservation asset, 80% conservation standard and overall 40% standard. The referring body should also consider whether any contributions to town open space fund is warranted in conjunction with such waivers. Interesting,
So they're saying, hey, you can pay to get out of it.
but I don't think that's not, at least I can tell you, the conservation team and all the stuff. We've talked about a new conservation program. We're going to advance that separately. That includes things like contributions to the funds and stuff. But when it comes to the protection of our natural resources, we particularly did this so that
We wouldn't do
you
that. Yeah.
can't pay
Right,
to
right.
be
Yeah,
exempt from
yeah.
it.
this seems
Right.
counterintuitive there.
Is 100 conservation buffer needed adjacent to utility infrastructure included in constrained land? Well, there's other parts of the code relative to that. Standards such as draft could require as much as 250 feet stream corridor buffer. Is such a buffer needed? Well, again, okay, it could have required 250-foot stream buffer if there's other factors that factor into the natural resource protection. It's almost like truthfully, I feel like these comments are trying to make it less stringent than what we're trying to make it. I know that sounds opposite for where we're normally at with these things, but the whole purpose of this was really to protect our natural resources and to make it so that, and we're not even telling the developer that they can't do it. What we're saying is if any of these points trigger or fall with your proposed development, then you need to do a natural resource inventory analysis. You need to do the analysis and show us how this is going to impact what you're proposing to do impacts the natural resources for that particular property. Hedgerows are a significant element of scenic character of agriculture. Referring bodies should consider addressing their importance and regulations related to conservation analysis and land types. H2C regarding preparation of narrative only requires maintaining access to farm fields. Consider requiring assessment of whether proposed conservation plan retains viable farmland that would be desirable for use in nearby farming operations on field assets. Configuration of buffering from residential uses. In any case, the town's agriculture advisory committee should review the assessment. Sketch plan, optional step in conservation subdivision process. I won't go into all the details on that.
The sewage treatment one looks interesting.
It allows underground sewage treatment facilities in conserved areas. Conserved lands are required to be on separate parcel than developed uses for conservation easements. We require those to be not conserved lands, required to be on separate parcel than developed uses, while sewage treatment facilities should be located on the property they serve. Additionally, effective leach field operations require regular mowing to prevent establishment of successional shrubs and trees. This seems at odds with the intent of conserved lands. The intent to preserve the meadow habitat for nesting birds. Other lands that can be mowed less frequently should be identified. So again, that's something that's one of the ones where I went apart to look at that a little bit more, but the conserved land. So if somebody wants to put a conservation easement on a parcel as part of a subdivision, we now require that parcel to be its own separate parcel so that we don't have, like what we've learned from developments over the years, like Stablegate, my development, people put sheds in the conservation area because it's part of their same property. And it's almost unenforceable because it's their property. They're paying taxes on it. So in more recent years, what the town has done is said, okay, Mr. Developer, if you're going to do a conservation area or conservation lands, that has to be its own separate property with the easement for that tax map number to the town of Canandaigua, and then we have the ability to go in and enforce and monitor that. So that I think the county's a little bit confused on maybe our operations in that particular piece of it. But then the whole thing about sewer, so the septic tank, so it wouldn't be sewage treatment facility because.
I think they're thinking leach field because they're saying you need to mow above it.
So this is where it gets confusing with the county's comments. So if it's a subdivision of 4 or more homes, it has to be on the sewer, which is the county sewer.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't be a septic system.
Yeah, oh, that's why I was wondering, like, is it possible that we're having big septic systems?
No.
Okay,
There's another section of the code that requires it to be one.
perfect.
Who prepared this?
County planning, one of the staff
I mean,
members.
this isn't the county planning board.
No, it's not the
Comments.
board, it's the staff comments. And then the final one, consider requiring development of forest management plan for any conserved woodlots. I mean, it's interesting. I know the planning board has done that from time to time. I think what they're suggesting is writing it into the law. I think there's pros and cons to that, given the planning board flexibility to figure out when they want to require that helps a lot, because then they're looking at parcel by parcel in an area that there may be woodlands on it, but like, for instance, what if it's a forest of ash trees? They're all going to die anyway. What's the point of having a forest management plan for that? So giving the planning board the flexibility to go through that. So anyway, sorry, I know that was a lot on that conservation subdivision, but it is an important law that we need to get adopted for our, and I've said this 100 times, our current code relative to conservation subdivision, I feel like is a get out of jail free card for the developers where they can come in and propose almost anything they want. And, they can start down through the process where at least, this effort that the whole conservation team has been working on really makes it more very specific in the natural resources in the analysis that has to be done as part of the whole conservation subdivision. And it has to be meaningful conservation. It can't just be somebody's backyard that they're gonna call conservation. It now has to be meaningful. conservation.
Does it make sense to pass the law and then come back in a relatively short time and update it with anything that comes from this? Or is that the right thing?
Maybe,
to do?
the other thing is, I did ask Barb Johnson to go, because she was the one that helped us draft all that. I asked her to go through that for us. And she said that she thought she'll be ready before Monday night's meeting. to
Oh,
provide
so
any
maybe she'll give us
comments.
a little,
So if there's maybe some tweaking
Eyeball.
that she's recommending, maybe we could still go ahead and do it and do that. But
No, we need to do it. I mean, it's been,
hanging
you
out
know.
there as an opening too long,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was my thoughts as well. We can, there's always going to be things that we can do to tweak it, but we get
long as
moving
it's
and then
not
we can, right.
Yeah,
well, they didn't deny it.
no, they didn't deny it.
So,
They were all just
I mean,
comments. Yeah.
yeah,
and a lot of the
Okay.
comments you have already pointed out. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of them not being as versed in what our town laws are. So there's probably maybe 3 or 4 of them that could have some meat associated with them.
Right.
So we update the standard in 6 months, 3 months, whatever.
So then we get into the continued resolutions that we just talked about, the form-based code, the digital signage, and the comprehensive plan. So I'm just gonna skip down to the new section here. Sorry, Kathy, I know I'm scrolling fast there. Probably looking on your screen.
Getting her dizzy.
Yeah.
That's okay. I have my agenda next to me on the other screen, so I'm good.
Budget transfers. Kate, I don't think there were.
I think there's 4 of them, though. Oh, no, one folder up from the one we picked. There you go.
Water engineering, park bench sponsorship, HSA, HRA, and water legal. Oh, that was Canada
Farmington Water,
Consolidated,
yeah,
Canada-
yeah.
or I'm sorry, Canada Farmington Water
Yep,
District.
yep.
That was that IMA was $135 bill that we got between the town of Farmington and town of Canada, and that was not budgeted for this year, so we had to
Was
do a
that because we
budget.
approved that resolution finally?
And Nadler sent us a bill.
Nadler
for
adjusted he reviewed the agreement. Yeah.
Yep. So, but they're all relatively small.
Yeah, that
20
one
bucks.
was, yeah.
I mean, there's some big ones in there too, because we have the, you have the one that's looking at additional revenue
Oh, but that's.
coming up. That's a
separate.
separate
Yeah.
resolution.
Yeah,
That's just
correct.
these,
Yeah, these
that's these
transfers.
transfers that we've done
Yeah,
for this resolution.
Yeah.
So, okay. They were all less than 5,000, way less than 5,000. Okay, so the next one is the big budget adjustment. So that's the increase in sales tax coming in here. 400,000 additional is what the resolution calls for, recognizing additional revenue for sales tax. So, and Kathy had sent us out, we have this second quarter sales tax report. You see, this time last year, our sales tax number was 933 and it was 1.4 million for the second quarter. So that's where the $400,000 number comes from. Just going ahead and increasing the revenue by 400,000. And then obviously you see putting the overwhelming majority at 300,000 into contingency. But we have some technological critical needs that are actually the next couple of resolutions, and this resolution funds basically those account lines for those next resolutions.
did we, and, or maybe it's here somewhere later in the agenda. Did we book our 577 yet? In our budget resolution from the state and feds?
It's
That-
separate. It's separate.
It's a separate resolution?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I saw it, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to forget to ask the question
Yeah.
in case.
It's separate. Yep.
Right.
Any questions on this one? And I'll jump to that one. Okay, so then this next one is, I mentioned this at the last town board meeting. We talked about this briefly. This is the improvements to the Onanda room for the hybrid style meetings with the projectors, the microphones, also the microphones for court and the amplification system all in the room and everything. So it is sizable. It's almost $30,000. But this would take care of all of that so that you'd be able to have Zoom and, for instance, like site plans specifically for the planning board, displayed in the room at the same time.
But we put 80,000 in the budget line. Right?
There's a couple more.
There's more.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say,
All right,
It's not done yet.
yeah. Any questions on that one before I jump to the next one? Okay. Authorizing service installation of network cables in town hall.
oh, right, I forgot.
Kate, why don't you?
So I kind of adopted this, because Tyler's a little bit part-time, but, the phones that were approved, we were moving full steam ahead, and the engineer came and sat with us, and Tyler said, so what kind of cable requirement is there for these phones? And she said, it has to be Cat 5 or higher. And he said, well, that's gonna be a problem, because we have switches in the attic that have Cat 3s from our current phone system going into them and converting to Cat 5s on the way back out to each of our stations. And she said, well, they'll get to the switch, but the moment the phones get to the switch, they're gonna stop. They won't actually ever leave our building and work properly.
So those are like things like up in the attic that
Mhm.
nobody ever.
That we
that's-
didn't even know existed. No one knew until Tyler started tracing lines to say, where's this going? And we found these switches in absolutely every office. There are switches in the attic, there are switches in the drop ceiling, there are switches in every office. Sarah and I work off of one jack. Both of our phones, both of our computers work off of one jack. And in the code enforcement office, 3 computers work off of one jack.
So it splits the basically
So-
the amount of speed that. they
Yeah.
get.
Exactly, we're slowed down, we're not using it efficiently, and we've been having these kind of complications, and now it's kind of all becoming reality, like, oh, this is why. So Tyler and I, we walked around with Land Tech first. They're the ones who did the infrastructure in the highway building. And we identified some different locations, and they came back and said it's gonna be between 30 and 40,000 for what you want to do, to make a straight run from the server cabinet to the wall jack for every station. And so we went out and we got some other quotes, and I'm really glad we did, because Land Tech came in at 41,000, and our options for the exact same thing came in at 33,900. And then we had another, Larry Macy Electric came in at 34, just a little over. They actually asked if they could rebid, but
Mhm.
by the time I had already communicated to everyone, and I said, we just can't do that at this point. But I'm really glad we did go back out and look for different options. And so we are, I reviewed it with Tyler and with Doug, and we are recommending our options. They've worked with the county, the city of Canandaigua, and many other school districts in our area, and are very, very familiar with public work. And I felt very comfortable with them as well. So we're recommending them for this infrastructure project.
It's really a product, I think, of the town hall being built, and then over the years, just different things being added, and
Yeah, this is so
You know,
typical.
it's
Yeah.
just.
Yeah, he said they do this, and he
And
said.
are they planning to pull out some of the old stuff? I mean, because at some
Tyler's
point
been
we
doing
have,
a lot of it.
so much up there.
Yeah,
I feel like
what-
the ceiling's gonna collapse.
We're actually, what we want to do is run all the new cables in a totally separate location from the other cables. We have a run where we can run the new cables, and they won't overlap with the others until they get to the workstation. So Tyler will terminate the ones and pull them all, the old ones, and pull them all out, and the
Okay.
new ones are gonna be labeled. They're gonna be all the same color, all the same cable, and they're going to be, we'll have like a spreadsheet of which each location is, that we can track each one.
If you want to, before you guys leave, I'll show you in the room over here, it's probably miles of cable that's all spooled up in there now that Tyler's been pulling, that's not even being used currently, that's been left over from various improvements.
Yeah, the spaghetti can get heavy.
Yeah. It's crazy. So, okay. And then I didn't mention, but that first one with the audio visual in the Onanda room, that's on state bid, and they've recently, the same company completed Victor's improvements. And then they also are the ones that did Farmington's too. They've been working around that. So anyway, Okay, so the next one is Wi-Fi upgrades in the town hall. You all know this, you'll hear me complain about this all the time, and I know that we've had the issue in our town board meetings. The Wi-Fi in this building does not work at all, especially on this level. So this would actually fix our Wi-Fi issue. It's $13,000. It would replace the switches, basically. They have to be different type of switch than the other. But it would replace that and get us back up and going.
And who's this one with? Did we bid this?
This is actually just equipment. This is Tyler would do the work and he's quoted the equipment. So I don't believe there is a vendor.
So, well, it's integrated.
Oh, it's integrated,
It's
yeah.
integrated. It's you need 2 of these externate switches, whatever those are, 4355, and then you've also got to have this stuff here. You've got to have the dual band indoor and all of this stuff. And so it's a combination of it is the 13,000. And then Tyler said that a lot of it he can do, but there's parts of it he'll need integrated to help him with
We'll just use a contract.
contracts, the 75 an hour.
Is this gonna address Jim's issues at all?
No.
That'll be separate. We've got to do that too, but this is the town hall. The first thing with Jim's issue is we have to replace the cable that goes from the town hall to the highway building. Or at least the connectors, from what I understand, the ends of it.
At the ends, Doug, yeah.
But they're like $1,000 each, and we just got to get it done. But we're so choked down right now, even if we did that, it wouldn't help you until we do all this other
Right.
stuff. It's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, but it's all. I think about it, I was saying this to, I think Terry the other day, all the things that we've done in this building just the last couple of years, the HVAC, the technology, I mean, it's getting to the
It's like a
point
new
where it's
building.
like, wow, yeah. Been major investments, so, okay. So since we're on this IT kick, part-time IT position, I know we've talked about this in the past, so this would actually create the IT position. So we can move forward with, Tyler generally works 8 hours a week for us. Sometimes he works a little bit more than that, but Tyler is good, but Tyler would also be the first to tell you, he doesn't have the knowledge in the background for a lot of the stuff that we start to get into as we continue to make technology advances. And, you know, he strongly supports bringing somebody in with the education of IT. So this would be a part-time position. This actually just creates the position, right, Lindsay? I don't think
Correct.
this actually funds the position.
We did put budget lines in there.
It doesn't fund it.
It doesn't fund
It
it.
identifies that there's a line
There's an
that's
existing
created.
line
but-
that's already
yeah,
been
but
created
we
as part of
haven't
the
done
budget, but
any.
it's not funded. We'll have to.
How do
figure
we
that out.
find this person? They are in short supply and hard to find.
Civil service.
Okay.
And we have a person, right? There's a
Yeah.
person that was on the list. We haven't interviewed the person or anything, but it's county civil service. Okay. The next one here, the software for short-term rentals. So we've talked about this a couple of different times. I know some of you may have gotten complaints recently about short-term rentals. I know I have also. So, well, I think we just had a new one, but there were up until, as of last Friday, there were 5 registered short-term rentals in the town of Canandaigua. Meanwhile, all the companies that we've worked with, when they do the analysis and show,
It's like 30 or
there-
50.
there's like 220.
Oh, my gosh.
And 5 of them are registered. There's another gentleman just came in, and so the way it's currently been working, and remember, we put the law on the books because we wanted to see if it was something that, you know, we could kind of do in-house, just track with an Excel spreadsheet, but we only do it basically on a complaint basis. Where when somebody calls and complains about the neighbor's house that is being operated as a short-term rentals and the parties all nights, hours of the night and everything, that we would then go out and say, hey, you need to register. And that's worked okay, but it hasn't worked great. Like I said, there's 220 currently operating as of July 2021 in the town of Canandaigua, and we have 5 that have registered. So
And remind me, what's the fee to register your
it's
property?
$100 per year. So if we really had the 220, that would be $22,000 a year that we would receive in revenue for the registrations.
And
and
this
the
is
costs.
saying, let's give half of it to the software.
7,500 is, there's a setup fee in there, but 7,500 is the software. But here's the thing, they completely manage it for us. And we've reviewed tons, there's tons of these companies and we've reviewed tons of them and a lot of them want $20,000 to $25,000. This one is $7,500 a year. For that $7,500 a year, they will identify all the short-term rentals by using their search engines like Airbnb and VRBO. They go out and they do all that. Plus they send a letter to the homeowner. We have to approve the letter, but they send a letter to the landowner saying, hey, please know that you are required to register in the town of Canandaigua. Here's the law. Then they help us track and figure out who registered and who didn't. And it's all tied into the system. So it's a complete assist with the management of the registration. There's a lot more like compliance monitoring and those types of things that they offer, a la carte options, I would call it. But I actually asked them not to quote that stuff because our law is just basic registration. So really first step is just getting it registered. So they can even, if we ever went down the road of taxing that separately and tracking revenue, they could do all that, but this would just be for that first piece, that registration piece. Any questions on any of that?
Nope.
I talked to you guys about appointment of a part-time temporary real property aide to help Pam Post with the rebound.
Yeah.
That's what this resolution is, 5,500. Next resolution is the ARPA funds. ARPA funds. Ugh. I kid you not, it's just unbelievable. The regulations keep changing. I got a new 63-page guidance document yesterday.
From the our townspeople or,
No, it comes from the US Treasury
oh, okay,
for the ARPA money.
all right.
And it's just a constantly moving. I was actually on a conference call last week and Mary Gates and Mary Gates was on there from the county also with me. And counties are a little bit different than towns. There's some different requirements and everything, but we both actually said the same exact thing, is that at this point, it's hard, you know, recommending, there's a lot of municipalities that have run out and they've purchased stuff because they're getting this federal stimulus check. That's probably a really bad idea to go out and do that until we know all the rules and regulations and everything. So this resolution doesn't actually, this is an acknowledgement resolution. It doesn't commit us to anything. It's an acknowledgement resolution, you acknowledging that we did receive the $577,000.
No, we did get it.
We did get the first one, yes, and then we get the second one next summer. And then we did account for it per the New York State Comptroller's memo under liabilities 688 and also under 4089. And that we're creating a capital project to track the revenue and expenses relative to ARP funds, to track it separately from the rest of our budgets, so that any expenses that we have, we know specifically for this. So it creates a capital project for us to do this, because it's going to span multiple years, clearly.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
so if we got it, why are we creating a due from for the full amount? I would expect it to be half of the amount because we already have half of the amount. It's not due from the government anymore. We only have half of it due.
That, well, go ahead, Kate. It's that is the requirement.
Okay,
of the
so,
comptroller.
yeah, so what we're doing is we've created the due from and the liability in the general fund currently, because we received the money. And what Doug's asking to do is to move that to a capital project fund. And then once we move it to the capital project fund, we'll recognize the revenue and we can decrease the due from state and federal to the other half that we'll get in the rest of the year. But the comptroller said you cannot recognize a revenue until you've decided how you're going to spend it and incurred the expenditure. So until that time, it has to stay as a liability on our books, because until we have an expense for it, it has to be paid back.
And you actually have until December 31st, 2026 to expend all the monies. You haven't
Right.
until December 31st, 2024 to actually commit it, but till 26. This is a multi-year. I mean, it's $1 million, you know, it's
Yeah,
for
so-
us, that'll go relatively quickly, but
So as I look at it, other liability is such a vague name.
That's what the comptroller told us.
Can
to
we
do.
not
Yes.
say other liability, ARPA or
But-
something?
well, that's what
It's
the capital
specific
project.
to the.
Okay,
But see,
oh,
this
okay, so
is
that's,
H
okay.
33. This
All right,
is
so that's a
specific.
capital project, it's in the name.
Yep.
And then in terms of the revenue, I still feel like what it should be is, one of it is 577 that we've already received, and one of it is due from.
But that's all in the general fund right now.
Yeah.
And what Doug's asking is to move it to HH 100 and create a capital project where we initially recognize the full amount. And then once the capital project's created, we'll move the revenue over as well. And
Okay,
we'll
but you,
decrease
and
the
you
due
could
from state
create,
and
you
federal.
can create it and move the revenue in one entry.
I can't create the full amount and do the revenue and we
Yeah,
want
no,
to
I
show
mean,
the
in
full
one
amount in
resolution, I was
one.
thinking.
Oh, yeah,
you
in
could
one
have- sorry,
resolution.
sorry,
Yes,
Sorry,
yes,
I said
yes.
entry, I meant
Yeah.
resolution.
Yes, yes,
But the
yes.
entry for the revenue has already been made for, right, for 688 and 4089. That's already in
In
the,
AA 100.
right, in the general fund. That's
Yeah,
already
and my
done.
point is, we do not have $1.1 million due from the feds. We already got 577 of it. That's where, that's my whole
We
hold.
don't have 577 in capital project number 33.
It's not due from the federal government there. Because it's
Yes, it
due
is.
from the general fund.
Well, you could do a transfer of
I'm just saying,
577.
we have 577, and that's my psychological problem with this, is it's saying we have 1.1 due from the government when we already received some. But, you know, ultimately, get it moved by next time and they'll be fine.
Yeah, this is establishing the full
Yeah.
amount to begin with. And then we could add an amendment to this resolution, which would add the additional
Or we
entry
just do the
to show
transfer
the
and then
receipt.
It'll be attached to the next agenda anyway.
Yeah.
I'll show it. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But, yeah.
Yeah, just psychologically, we're putting out something that says we have it, even if it's just for a month. It's showing that it's due when we already got it.
But keep in mind, it's specifically, here's the capital project number 33 ARPA, so it's specific to.
Yeah, that helps me with why we could have other liabilities. And then we have those other things that we think are gonna be like the overtime and whatever.
Well, premium pay from March
Premium pay,
21
right.
forward, so it doesn't go back to last year. So that's separate. That's all
Yeah, yeah,
separate.
so
That's
we can
FEMA
start
money separate.
relieving that, right, or no?
No, because
no.
that was 2020. Those don't qualify for ARPA funds.
I'm
Yeah.
getting the two of them mixed up, I guess.
It's ridiculous. The whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. It's like a paperwork nightmare. So then you have these 4 categories. So here is the other thing that's going on is, so while the town of Canandaigua, because it's a non-entitlement unit, is not required to provide an interim report by the end of August, the county, for instance, caveat, this is a little difference between the county and the town. The county is required to provide a annual or an interim report by the end of August. The town is not. However, we are required to provide the first annual report back to the state and feds by the end of October on what we're doing with the money. And then we have to submit a report annually, and that's the 64-page document guidance that I just got in terms of how that's going to be reported. We've got to come up with a plan on how we're going to spend this money. That's where I'm going with this. So the resolution also calls on, because I don't know what else to do, and I need you guys to seriously move on this. Either you guys need to decide in a town board meeting how we're going to spend this, or what I suggested here in the resolution is charge that to the finance committee. That the finance committee come up with a plan and come back to the town board.
I feel like in our last town board meeting, we did talk about discussing it at finance.
Yeah,
So-
I did that presentation and we talked kind of generally.
But we
there
didn't make a
wasn't-
vote or something.
Yeah, well, we just need to move forward with something. At least with this resolution, I can say as part of the report that the finance committee is working on it.
Yeah, and I think you
Oh.
should, and I think if we have a meeting next week, we talked about Terry's team having an idea of some things that would be top of the list.
How specific does that report have to be?
I'm still going
I
through
mean,
the new, but yeah.
Does it have to say I'm gonna dig a hole over there? and-
Well, it has to be relative to the 4 categories.
Yeah, but I mean,
We
It's gonna
already
be-
know that the top 3 categories on that list are ones that we don't really have a lot of
Well, here's where it gets tricky, right? So water sewer infrastructure, water sewer broadband infrastructure, right? So that could be stormwater, that could be freshwater, sewer, we don't really have sewer, broadband, whatever. The responding to COVID-19 public health emergency or its negative economic impacts.
That's
that
not a category that works
includes-
for us.
No, it does.
Oh, it does?
Under that category is outdoor recreation, parks and recreation, there's any number of things. That's why it's gonna take time to go through this. This is not a quick, easy thing.
Well, it only
Everything.
takes time to go through that if we think that we want to put it there. We have these 4 categories. If as a town board, we look at it and say, hey, we know we have needed infrastructure in sewer and water. Why don't we just throw it there? Is there a reason why that wouldn't
Well,
be a
it's
solution?
identified in the projects. I
Right,
mean,
right. No, but I'm just saying, I understand that all of those other categories might have some things, but we, as a town, we know we have needs in the other thing. Would it not make sense to just
Well, I
focus
know
on
I
the one
said
we
that,
know?
you know, in our sewer master plan, you know, the top 3 categories listed, you know, the first 2, we struck out on because it's too expensive for the residents in those areas, you know, to pay the annual cost.
Upkeep, yeah.
However, even with this, if you said we're gonna spend it on one of those sewer districts, we don't know that money would make it possible for those people to still afford it. So I mean, you could say, yeah, we're gonna spend it there, but we put all the numbers back together again and say, okay, now, people, can you afford this? And they say no. Then that project is, so I mean, how do you?
So can I just want to, can you set forward the latest guidance on what we have to report by October 31st? And can we change that? You know, if it, at some point, if it turns out, like Terry's saying, we have an idea, maybe what we want to do with it, but if it's not feasible, I would imagine there's got to be a way to change it. I think they just want to see a plan for it. I don't think it's indelible and you can't change it after that.
I would agree with exactly what Kathy said. That's, yes, you have to have a plan, but it can be changed.
Okay, well, in that case,
But what I think we should do is if maybe next week at the meeting, we list our top categories, and it could include some park upgrade or whatever in one of the other categories, but clearly we provide sewer and water as part of our town services right now. And it feels like if we have this extra inflow, is there something we can do to assist getting our plan moved forward on those categories? That would be great. And not burden ourselves by trying to create one in every of the 4 categories, you know. Over,
well, we're currently working on County Road 28. That was number 3 on the list of priorities in the sewer master plan. But then our engineer Greg Hotel has talked to the county come back and said that they want to see more information regarding the future. What's the future possibilities? Will that if there's more building in that area, in that corridor, will that overtax the systems that are in place on the county side? So we're going to have the meeting last week, but we had to postpone it till tomorrow. And Greg had identified possible future expansion in that area, and he wanted to present that to us tomorrow so that we could say, yeah, let's go back to the county and tell them this. It's not at a point yet where we can say, you know, here's the final cost, you know. We do. I mean, the questions the county is asking don't really have a bearing currently on what the cost would be in that area, but until we get those questions answered to the county, Greg doesn't feel comfortable putting a final number on what the cost would be. So then we could look at how could we relieve that with some of this money.
so that and Cheshire, so what is, if we throw, we ran all the Cheshire numbers kind of
Yeah.
recently, hoping that we were gonna get that grant, and the grant
Yeah.
didn't even take a bite out of it.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I mean,
is
it
what my
did help,
recollection is.
but it didn't help
It
enough.
didn't help enough.
But whether that
What size
grant
was
is,
the grant?
it was like, wasn't it $1 million? $1 million bucks. I don't
And
know.
that
if
grant
that's-
is not still available?
Well, that's a
Probably-
question.
I mean, it probably would be.
So if
That's
we
a
had the
pretty-
million plus this million, would that
Yeah.
help the Cheshire people enough?
Well, costs are up too, but
You'd
Yeah,
have to
I
look.
mean, the costs are, astronomical right now for pipe and concrete.
And we have
stuff.
2 years to do it, so hopefully some of them start to come down, because I know lumber started coming down,
Yeah,
maybe the rest of it's gonna level out, but maybe it's not. But I'm just saying, if we throw the two numbers at it and we still see it's way too high for the Cheshire people to afford, then we know we cannot go there. But I feel like we should be looking at those top 3 projects,
yeah.
figuring
that's-
that out.
yeah. I mean, if it's acceptable to say that in the end, while it didn't work because of whatever other economic factors, and then change the plan, then fine.
Right, keep
Then
going
that's
down
what it
the
was,
list.
yeah, just-
But
I agree with that. I'm on board with that.
yeah, it seems like we could do like a back of the envelope calculation
Yeah.
for a couple of these projects and see where.
Okay.
where we
So
think we
it's
could use
obviously,
it.
you know, it's 577 this year and 577 next year, so it's
Mhm.
Right.
it's
We
not a
can,
ton. I mean,
no, but 1.1 is, it's a gift,
Right,
but it
right.
doesn't come free. We have to do some work to
Well, it
spend it.
should put a big dent in that, annual cost for these people, so. Another $1 million
Right,
total. I mean, a project like that wouldn't be started until next year anyway, I would think, so.
Of
Or-
2 years.
yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be
well, we
out.
gotta
in a few
spend it
years.
by a certain amount of time.
I know, but like,
That's a
we don't have any, we got to deal with the state.
Yeah,
That's a lot of work to do. We
it
gotta
just
have
has to
an
be completed
engineer.
by December 31st,
Yeah, yeah, approve-
26.
yeah, we
So
gotta
it
approve by
2026.
DOH.
has to be
Yeah,
completed
we're sick.
completely.
Yeah,
Okay.
done by
Thanks.
26.
complete.
You're
Has to
talking-
be committed by 24, but by the end of 24, but spent by the end of 24.
So should we use next week's meeting to kind of just create a mini list of the things that we're gonna potentially throw it at?
mhm.
And
Well,
if
it
there's
sounds like
any,
you guys are generally saying throw it all at Cheshire, which is fine, but I mean, that whole 1.1 million. I mean, that could easily go to that. What was that cost? Do you remember? It was like.
That's what I don't
it was
remember.
3-something.
3 and change. It's gotta be close to 4 now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
for 8-inch pipe, I know it's not the same as sewer pipe, but
Well, we'll be meeting, Greg's supposed to be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Could ask Greg to
back of the
plug
envelope. kind of
1.1
whatever.
million into that, what's it do to the numbers for it,
right.
based on current costs.
Yeah, we might have to up the cost, lower, yeah,
Yeah,
and
what's it do? It may.
may
at
not
this
do
point,
anything.
It might just offset the increase in cost and it's still,
All right.
all right, so we'll do that
And then if there
tomorrow.
are certain, definitely, I know what you're saying is, hey, we could have some open air stuff or whatever. And if there is something like that, that's in your mind, put it on the mini list.
I don't know that we need to do that. I just want you guys to know that that is an option for you. We have enough truthfully, we have so much going on in Parks and Rec. And we have other revenue sources. I just want you guys to know that it is options, but you can throw that whole thing at Cheshire. It easily falls under the sewer component of it. No problem.
It'd be legal
Yeah,
by this.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it would be a good way to get something done if we could use it, but.
Yeah.
And I would like to use it on a need rather than a
Yeah,
nice to
and
do,
this is, yeah, well,
but whatever we can use it for, I mean, it'll ultimately be the.
Okay. The next resolution would authorize me to extend our interim municipal agreement with the city of Canandaigua for the local development corporation, the LDC. This funds, the agreement is actually attached and the city council just approved this last week, but this funds each municipality's contribution for the next 3 years at 25,000 each. It was 50,000, so it reduces it to 25,000 each. So
Right.
that's what that is. Kathy, any comments on that? Obviously, you're on the LDC. I know you also might have background in that, but
No, I not this time.
okay. So this one accepts local government records management improvement grant. This is Jean.
Jean's grant, yay. So with the help of Kate and Sarah, gonna get this process moving. We need to put, we got the $64,600, and then we need to do some expenditures for personal services, equipment, and contractual. Already started conversations with 2 companies that are basically state bid, state approved companies to do the scanning and to write the policies and procedures. So this is basically just setting up the budget lines for that. So as expenditures come in, we can pay them out. right?
So is this an annual expenditure then?
No, this is from a grant.
Oh, okay, so this is the historical,
No, this
No.
is the records management grant.
This is another new grant and it creates a capital project, so it's tracked
You've
separately.
applied previously,
Yeah, we've
3
applied. what,
times?
3 times.
Yeah.
and this is the first time you've successfully been awarded.
so we got the grant, and the grant is working on what we have in the backlog, or is it working on
Yes.
current stuff, or
It's
what?
we're gonna be scanning over highway and water, get all the road maps, record drawings, those kinds of things.
Okay, so stuff, this
Scan
is stuff that had
first.
never been scanned before.
That's
Oh,
correct.
yeah.
And
Well, there
then-
was, we had originally said it was gonna be 5 years, but it's gonna take longer than that. It's like
Yeah.
15 million documents have to be scanned.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Mhm.
And then once those are done, then we'll go back into the development office and work on numerous boxes, 25 boxes of stuff that needs to be scanned. So
There's still, how many of the giant 4-drawer filing cabinets are there that need to be scanned? Probably 20.
Probably,
Oh, in the development
yeah.
office?
Yeah, in the development office.
there's probably 20.
Yeah, 20 in the development office, plus there's
Plus the
multiple in the
boxes.
highway.
Multiple.
Yeah.
And this will we end up using this grant all in 1 year?
Oh,
or-
I have to close out by next June.
Okay, so,
So, yeah.
so definitely, and there'll be like contractors in-house doing this, or will they be hauling our
Um,
documents away?
They will be, the scanning, we will prep the files and they will come pick them up, go and scan and return within a week. And then we'll make sure the scanning is high quality, and then if it is, then it'll go right into Laserfish. And then Jim wants his paper records back, but they will be noted as if they've been scanned, so that we know they've been scanned, so, yeah.
All right.
But yeah, we have to get this work done and get ready to close out the grant by June 30th next year.
Okay.
So it's
it's
a
a
year,
busy-
just under a year, but it's gonna lap 2 budgets.
Yeah,
So
it's a
we're
lot
going
and a
capital
lot of work,
project with
yeah,
it. Yeah.
So all
And a
those documents
policy
will be
too,
done,
to help.
Pardon me?
all those documents
In
that
the
will
hi-
be done.
just the highway.
Not
That's
the
in the
development
records
office.
room. Yeah, no.
Just the highway. I wish it was a development office, so we get all that space back.
Yeah, that would be nice, but
Maybe up late at night scanning.
yeah, so. But that's what that's all about.
All right, so the next one is the history one that you were just asking about, Linda. So this is we were awarded the grant for the next phase of the history project, the next reconnaissance, I can't say it. Reconnaissance survey.
Very
thank
good,
you.
reconnaissance.
But anyway, so this is also a capital project, H31, relative to that. One thing's just so you know, we're working on budget stuff right now. Kate, I've asked Kate, in the past, and I don't know why we haven't done this, I don't have a good answer for that, but in the past, we've never really included, not in the budget itself, but at least in the narrative, all the stuff for capital projects. So Kate's working on that for me this year, so at least we'll have that in the narrative. Because truthfully, like we have a $13 million budget, but that's not true. Our annual budget is usually like 20 million with all the capital projects and stuff. So
So, yeah, because it's relieved to
just
go
to-
into capital.
yeah, so we're gonna spell that out in the narrative section, not in the actual budget encode worksheets, but we're gonna spell that out so you guys have a clear picture of what's going on with the capital projects.
Of
also.
spending on capital,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, okay, all right, then this next one. So this next one, we had a brief discussion at the last town board meeting about this, and really, you guys are gonna have to make a decision on this, but this would require all employees of the town of Canada either to be vaccinated or to have weekly testing done. So that's not a financial, that's a policy. So it's up to you guys. Whatever you want to do, but I know that if the question was raised and there is attached to this is the policy that would say, and the whole COVID policy would say. Oh, I just want to pull it up here.
14, Doug, 14.
Number 14. So this would add that to our COVID policy that proof of vaccine or negative test effective October 1st. Would not receive the vaccine are either required to either obtain a vaccine or provide proof of a negative test weekly. And I know that there's some places that have started doing that, including all state employees. I think theirs is by Labor Day, but
We're giving them one more month to get all organized.
I think it needs an extra month at least. Lindsay and I talked about it because if somebody hasn't even had their first dose yet, it's gonna take a little bit of extra time.
Are there people that are resisting?
So I believe we do have some employees that have chosen intentionally not to get the vaccine.
If they choose to go the weekly testing room, is that paid for through the insurance?
So they would either have to use their sick, personal, or comp time.
I think the testing is free.
Oh, the test
right?
was is free.
Yeah,
but
at
to
they-
this
get
point,
tested.
testing
it's
is free.
Yes,
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
go to like Walgreens and just walk in for one.
and some of the tests you do have to pay for, it depends, but there are free. But they would have to use their own personal time, their own PTO.
Or off time.
And then, so let's just go through the scenario. I come in a couple weeks in a row, I provide a negative test, and then I don't have a test this week. What are we doing? Sending them home?
It would be a violation of the policy, so they would have to be sent home.
They're sent to get a test.
Some people get test using their PTO, or they could take their PTO. I guess.
But they wouldn't be able to work until they provide that negative COVID test result.
Does this do anything to the? Oh, shoot, this is the union contract?
No, it's not in the union. None of this was all union contract created all that. Yeah, Kathy was just asking about collective bargaining, but it's not really part of the union agreement. Our current union agreement expires next year, and I'm sure that this will be part of that, and I'm sure that it'll be some discussion relative to all that in the next go around, but that agreement predated any of this stuff, obviously. COVID, nobody had ever even thought of it at that point in time.
Right. All right, sounds reasonable to me. We're up.
Jim, has Chris Litz said anything, as Chris represents the union, that's why I'm asking. Has he said anything about this? No.
Does he know that we're thinking about this?
I want to have a conversation with him about it too. Maybe we can catch up with him this week still.
I don't know if he knows, because I didn't say anything, because I didn't know what the policy was gonna be saying, so until the town board
Yeah.
has defined what's going to be said, I guess.
Right.
I had a
I'm good.
very, very brief conversation with him, actually, when he was out doing Blue Heron Park. I talked to him briefly about it. But obviously, I'm sure he wants to talk to the guys and stuff.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to pop in even while people are talking in the background, sorry. I know the county was working on this and perhaps speaking with Michelle Smith, I think there were some implications, but I'm pretty sure they're doing the same thing, so you might check with them. It's easier to say that than talk, but than type, so I apologize for the noise.
And no
No
problem. It isn't really, we can barely hear the people in the background, so it's not a problem. So,
Okay, I have my AirPods in, so I think it does mute the background noise a little bit, so.
yeah, seems to. All righty.
Sorry, I guess I
That's
have a
okay.
meeting after this with Cheshire Fire Department, but I guess they're in South Bristol responding to fire. so.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a structure fire.
Okay, the next one,
Roofs at Onanda.
Well, you talked about this, Lindsay.
All
Miss Park
right.
Lady, she's quickly becoming the park
Queen of the
expert.
parks. And I got a
Trying,
really nice
trying.
compliment for somebody at the Uplands in Onanda who was from somewhere else. They came up and they were hiking. They said the bathrooms up there were so clean. It was so nice to be able to
Yes.
Good.
use
hear.
That's
them.
excellent. My team tries really hard to keep it clean.
They were
Love it.
doing a good job.
All right, so we know that we need roof replacements on Crouch and Holden Pavilion, so we did put out an RFP. We got 5 bids and we went with the best value. So the following amounts for Crouch, it would be $54,880, and for Holden Pavilion, it's $9,880. And we went with Superior Exteriors of the Finger Lakes. And we have that in a spreadsheet so we can view. Where is that?
Looking for it.
Oh, it's actually, is it highlighted? Yeah, is it 15?
Right, the one that's highlighted. Got the check mark next to it, that one.
Oh, sorry. I kept reading, we'll finish Monday.
It's finished. All right, so you guys can see, again, we went with best value, so JEC came in lower than Superior Exteriors, but they didn't include everything that we asked for, including the underlayment, which is really important, obviously with our roofs, especially down there for weatherproofing. So they were only about 5,000 more than the lowest bid.
And let's just talk about this. So JEC is the company that we hired to do both the salt barn and they did King Hall. I'll let Jim talk about the salt barn. I'll tell you what happened with King Hall. With King Hall, they ended up doing a nice job, but it was intensive scrutiny, hand holding, debating back and forth. They were trying to swap out materials and we had to keep holding them to it. It was really a difficult process, but at the end, it was a nice job with King Hall, but.
And we had problems with safety. Chris Jensen told me to down more than once. They installed a roof incorrectly the first time. I had to make them take it off and reinstall it the right way. So
So yeah, if you have a bad experience with them, we shouldn't go
just, you know,
the amount of time that we'll spend internally.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah. So,
And this does, just so everybody's aware, so this does put metal roofs on Crouch Hall and Holden Pavilion. So that will be the first metal roofs on the lakeside. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So King Hall already has a metal roof. Actually, I took Terry for a tour last week and it looks nice, I think.
Mhm.
it's a standing seam roof, so it's not cheap. Put it
Yeah,
that way,
I don't
you
know.
And it's
so-
durable.
And they're gonna last a
Very
lot longer than the
Well, and that's the problem, especially on the lakeside in Onanda with all the pine trees.
pine
the
needles.
sap
They
And everything.
deteriorate it and give it
It really, we
mold.
don't
and-
get the life cycle out of the asphalt shingles with the lakeside in Onanda because of the pine trees. Okay.
Rezoning.
Okay, so this sets a public hearing. So these next two resolutions pertain to form-based code. Remember earlier I said holding off on that form-based code one might not be the worst thing because we have these two other resolutions. So number one is setting a public hearing on local law to rezone all the parcels in Uptown as form-based code. And then the second resolution, accompanying resolution, is the next resolution that sets a public hearing on the actual form-based code, putting it into town code, a local law, putting it into form-based code. So one of the things that this rezoning, setting the public hearing, see on the screen here, and sorry, Kathy, I'm just not showing it on the other screen, but is our form-based code map. So we'd be notifying all these landowners that we're looking to rezone their property from whatever it is currently to form-based code. So we'd be sending a letter out, letting them know that we're, that the town board is considering this for the September meeting. So that if they would like to express an opinion one way or another, that they could participate in that meeting, attend that meeting. Now, we've had, as I think you all know, we've had many meetings relative to form-based code. We even had the big one up at the school bus garage where a lot of these landowners came and participated. So I don't think it's gonna be new for really most anybody. You never know. We're in constant communication with quite a few of these landowners. A big chunk of these landowners is actually Randy Farnsworth, and he's been waiting for us to do this. There's development that's kind of on pause right now, waiting for this to happen. And then we have our whole big Uptown project. Uptown Landing is what it's called, next to Blue Heron Park, which also is in this same area. It's actually, for those of you on the road here, it's these 4 parcels here. Whoops. It's all-
Doug, I see that one of the people that wanted to give a presentation is Jeff Cook.
Yeah.
He's actually owns my building that I have an office in. So
Yes.
he's a landowner up there. I may, out of an abundance of caution, when the time comes to vote on this, not vote on it. I'm going to look into that a little bit more. I'm only a renter, but of course it makes it a little more dicey when I'm town supervisor and involved in this. So I'm going to look into that. Maybe Chris can also look into it. Clearly, if I was a landowner, I would not become involved in this voting. But I'll look into it myself, and maybe if Chris has an opinion or can find something for me. I've done research on it and have found that obviously if I was a landowner there, I could not become involved in this at all. So, but that's how I am. I worry about things like this always, and just want to let everybody be alerted to that.
Right. Well, as you know, I mean, we've talked about before, to avoid the appearance of impropriety, so it's, Jeff Cook, that Kathy mentioned, he really became involved fairly early in our whole Uptown concept as we did our Uptown study, feasibility study, and really was very supportive. And to the point where he financially invested and has actually purchased all of the office buildings on Parkside Drive and is now purchasing all this other land that I just showed you, Cook Properties. And, we kind of jokingly, I was in a meeting with him just recently, and I jokingly, we were talking about Uptown and we want to introduce that concept to you. But I said, so after you do that part, can we go back to the office buildings, tear them down and build nice office buildings? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So, he's definitely interested in, really bought into the whole concept. that we've
Being
been
the
talking
landlord
about.
for Uptown. It's just cool.
So yeah, so that being the case, I think clearly I should step aside on these. So I may not even, when we do the hearing, I may even just step out and let Jared do that.
Sure. Okay. So, and this resolution sets the public hearing for next month on that, and then the next resolution sets the public hearing on the local law, actually putting it into the town code. So, the next resolution is the conservation subdivision regulation one that we already talked about. If you want to continue that, then maybe you want to continue the resolution also. Next resolution 200 dissolves the drainage committee and combine it with the town board of planning. I know that we a lot of times refer to it as planning and public works because sometimes there's planning related items, and then a lot of times it's public works, infrastructure related things. And Gene had told us that the official name is planning, so I just put in parentheses public works
Yeah.
on the title, just so that there was some continuity there. But anyway, and obviously I know we've talked about this before. Chuck, who chairs that, is already on the planning.
Yeah.
and everything else, so.
Yeah, we spoke of it in the last meeting. He wanted to do this. So.
Terry, you want, this was your request.
Oh, yeah. We had this, was in last month or
I think it was 2 months ago.
2 months ago. We created this affordable housing project team, and Karen Parkhurst had sent out an email with an attachment a few weeks ago to all of us, asking that we reconsider this, and thinking about it, and just in my own mind, looking at what we've been talking about lately, in the southern corridor, with developments that have occurred and continue to occur down there. And in light of what might be occurring up in the Uptown area here, it seems that we do spend an awful lot of time talking about some of the higher end developments and the higher end, more expensive developments, and we don't give enough attention to affordable housing. Now, with this potential project coming in, it struck me that maybe we should allow this project team to have access to the up to $10,000 is what was in the resolution, to get some professional help to take a look at possibilities, because some of the housing that's being talked about in this Uptown area is going to be more affordable than some of our housing in our town. So I thought that maybe we should authorize, up to that $10,000 to get some help. I know we had talked about, this being a project that maybe the LDC would perhaps consider and work, with the town and the city, and perhaps the county. So I just wanted to bring it up again, and my own thought is that I would support this and ask that this team be given access to that funding to get some help to help steer what may be coming at us in this uptown area.
And why was this tabled? Remind me what tabled it?
Well, I think what we said at the time, some of us, that maybe the LDC could take this on and use it as something that would, bridge, the town and the city, and affordable housing. The city has perhaps more of a need for affordable housing than the town does. I mean, we don't know really. I mean, that's one of the big questions in this area is what is the real need? What is driving this whole thing? Is there a real need in the town? Is it more in the city? Frequently we lead the city through the woods, on various projects. And
I think half the people in the community don't know whether they live in the town or the
Well,
city.
they don't.
Terry. So
happens
so
all
it's
the
not a,
time.
it's not a either or, it's, what I mean,
Yeah, well, you read the
probably-
Canandaigua Chronicles, you look at some of the comments, people say, wow, you can do this or that. No, you can't,
right.
You're in the city, you're in the town, here's the rules here and there. So I just think it would be good to give them access to funding where they think they need the help, the guidance from somebody in a professional capacity, so.
I support that because I feel like we tasked a team to do something. It
Yeah,
reminds me of
we-
something that I got tasked with once at work, and I said to him, if you're not gonna give me any staffing for this project, how do you expect it to get done?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a little like what I think happened here is they said, hey, we need to really get at the nuts and bolts of it. Now, I hate when people want to spend money because I'm cheap, but I also feel like we can't ask our volunteer people to step up and do these
Yeah,
jobs and then say to
exactly.
them, sucks to be you that you want help to do it because we're not gonna let you have that help. So I went to Terry, and I think,
Well,
but
we
I
have
couldn't
people-
remember why we tabled that. We've just been tabling so
Yeah.
many things lately. It's great. Seems like,
It is difficult for them. I mean, they need, it's a group of people who stepped up to look into this, but
they're
they
not
don't have the
experts,
background
right? Yeah.
necessarily, the experience that would help, point in a certain direction, so. Anyway,
This resolution, just add to, is just a slight bit different than the previous version, and that it does specifically encourage the project team to work with the other stakeholders,
Yeah.
and municipalities and stuff, because I know that was one of the comments that was brought up. So it is a little
Right.
bit different in calling that out.
Well, like I said, we've got to support the people we're asking to do work. I mean,
Yeah.
if not, we're gonna have no volunteers left to help us.
True.
And then the final ones are Linda's favorite surety block.
Oh, yep, no discussion needed on the surety. I can't even imagine why we still have them on our agenda. I hate them. It should just happen. So. All right,
I triple checked these this month, sorry
Thank you.
about that.
no,
It
oh,
was a
good.
copy
Oh,
and
yeah,
paste
that
error.
was it. Well, it was just one of those things that I kept looking at. I should have said right away, but I couldn't. I was like,
If I could just take a second here too, under the attachments, there's a couple of new things that Lindsay's been working on here too for us. Lindsay, I'm sorry, I'm not picking on the spot.
No, that's fine. It's very
Under-
exciting.
Under the reporting section. Stay with the back one. So in your attachments of your documents.
It's,
those are-
August, let me go to reports. All right, so the one is the overtime report. Lindsay, which one is the?
The
next
new OT report, all employees, the
Third
third
one,
one down.
okay.
one?
All right, so I know we've obviously been providing an OT report that gave a projection of like previous years versus now. So I did get some feedback that we want more detail with that overtime report. So I did come up with this new reporting. It's just based on last month, breaks it down by department, how much, and then there's little details for the reasons why. I still included the other reports as well, just to show that difference. But I did want to ask for feedback on what it is you guys are actually looking for. Are we looking for that detail? Are we looking for by day? What are we trying
Well,
to?
The one- The town board member who specifically asked about it is not here, so.
Okay, okay.
So who asked about it?
Gary.
Gary.
I feel like this is almost I mean,
I think that's.
I think
great.
this is more information than what we need. If we're looking at overtime and we see a spike, then I would like to know what's driving the
Okay.
spike. But if overtime is chugging along at a certain amount, I mean, we've always got to be weighing, does it mean overtime or would another person be a cheaper way to operate? But I don't feel like we're not at that point. I don't know, I wouldn't want somebody to spend this much every,
Well, historically, the way this thing came about was really to track overtime in the highway department
Yeah,
years ago. And
before the debate about the 4 versus 5 hour work week too.
Right.
That was
Yeah,
a
I
big
mean,
driving factor.
but whenever there was a significant amount of overtime in the winter, it was because it snowed.
right?
In the summer, it was because it rained. I mean, there were reasons, valid reasons for every one of those occurrences.
I just gotta point out this is the reason why. See these tabs? There's a level of expectation that I don't know. I don't have the expectation that this kind of, I think it's a
Don't either.
lovely report. It's giving us more information than what we would need.
I'm
But-
happy to provide whatever it is that you guys need. So if you think this is
If
too
the town
excessive,
board
then I would have.
I
yeah,
just
would
don't
be
think
happy.
one board member should be coming to Doug and requesting information.
Special
and
stuff.
Special stuff,
I don't either.
okay? If the board in general wants it, and good, if one board member comes in every month, isn't happy about something, bring it up at the town board meeting and the board vote.
Well, and
on it
even
and
this
go
is a
from there.
finance report. And so realistically, if we want to add things, and I won't be the finance chair very much longer, but they should come to the head of the finance team and say, hey, we think these reports. Now, I would like to see fund balance reported more frequently. We have never, we were kind of on that path and we haven't been. And that's just a good,
Well, that's actually in, and maybe it's just pointing out where to find that, but that's actually in your report each month.
well, we used to get that one that showed, are we over, under, you know what I mean? That kind of gave us, how are we balanced against our policy? Now, I wouldn't want you to have to do that every month, but I feel like looking at it once a quarter on how we're doing against the fund balance policy
So
is one of those
maybe,
things, because we did get out of control in the not too long ago,
maybe the
time.
best thing is to go into that level of detail of the finance committee, because that's really part of the budget process when we really take a hard look at that and what's going on with it. So for instance, and you guys have all seen this before, my working spreadsheet and everything.
Right,
but,
we definitely do it at the budget time. I'm not taking away from that.
And then, like, for instance, I'm going through, and actually I have questions for Jim that I've highlighted, but like, for instance, this one, sorry.
I
to
can't
put you
read
on
it
the
from here,
spot.
I'm
That's okay,
sorry.
I'm gonna tell you. So for instance, and I was working on special districts yesterday for budgeting. And the Route 332 drainage district is well above where it should be in terms of fund balance, so. And really, there is an issue with the drainage districts. Most of the drainage districts have too much fund balance. Some of them have projects that are slated, but some of them are just out of line. Others, a lot of our lighting districts, you see the green means that they are in compliance with our fund balance policy. I think every one of those is in compliance. And then but again, that level of detail probably would be better to do that finance.
Yeah, we
more
could
so
do
than
it quarterly
town
or something, but just for the
Yeah.
future, only because we did get out of control and we had it as
Right.
comments from the auditors, is we just want to make sure it doesn't leave
Right.
your eyeball.
One of the challenges, I think, with doing it quarterly, though, is it really is relative to the end of year money and what's been spent or not spent, and then what rolls over into fund balance. So we could kind of say, hey, you might want to pay attention to this kind of generally during quarterly, but you really don't know until you get closer to the year. So for instance, like even in that example that I just showed you on drainage districts, I'm gonna just go back to that Route 332. So we were slated to have $50,000 in expenditures, which included, we were gonna use 25,000 in fund balance, and we levied 25,000 in taxes last year to pay for that 50,000. But now we're not gonna get to that expense. So that's gonna increase the fund balance all the way up to 120. So, those types of things, but you don't know that really until you get towards the end of the year, whether or not you're doing it, you see how much money is gonna roll back into fund balance, and then what's going on, and then
Well,
through the budget process too.
And the
So-
reason why I think more frequently than just once a year is appropriate is because it can kind of remind us, oh yeah, that's right, we were trying to get to there. Is there any chance we're gonna be able to get and do this work? Or what's the, you know what I mean? It's like these are out of sight, out of mind projects. And of
Mhm.
course, there's daily work that just always takes over. So if we look at it periodically, it might be like, oh yeah, that's right. Let's
do
try to
that.
prioritize that to get that done. And
Yeah.
if we wait till the end of the summer every year to look at it, then Jim's window is like so narrow, he can never get to it.
And there are times when you do appropriate fund balance for expenses that arise during the year as well. So
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it's out of the question.
I mean, I don't think it would be a long
Yeah.
discussion, but just to scan, how
Sure,
are we
yeah.
doing
Sure.
against this?
Yeah,
Well,
where
that-
are we?
And the other
Exactly.
thing is, did we move the money over? If we did the work, did we get the money moved into that? Because
Yeah.
that's another one of our pitfalls is we've forgotten to charge the projects or charge the districts for work that we really did do.
I think we've gotten a lot better. at
Yeah, I
that.
think so too. I do
That's-
too.
I don't think that's as
You don't
much
think
the
that's
issue
as
as
it
what
used
it
to
used
be.
to, what
Yeah,
it used
yeah.
to be a huge issue, but I don't think that's the case anymore. And Jim has gotten really, really good at, because I know I saw bills coming over for charging Parks Department for something. I was like, I thought the highway was just gonna eat this.
Right. Jim figured out this could be quite a little cash
Yeah.
inflow part of
Jim,
it.
Jim figured out, oh, I could charge other stuff. I can send them.
Say the word.
But like another example of that is this Lakewood Meadows Drainage District, Kate had just mentioned, we had appropriated, we did a budget adjustment for $8,000 this year. So the fund balance should have come down, but now I'm not so sure that work's gonna get done, so it may go back up again.
You know, those are trees, that work can get done still this year, it's this 332 stuff. But when I look at that, I hear exactly what you're saying, but like, we do try to squirrel away money so that it's there when it's time to clean a pond.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how our fund balances, our fund balance is set up for each drainage district, I don't know what.
So it's based on the calculation of what we actually went into that level of detail, where it's based on what the average clean out is.
Okay,
And so it's different for each, but generally it's in an amount not to exceed approximately $10,000 unless there's a planned clean out. For instance,
okay.
Waterford Point is planned on our capital project to be cleaned out in 23 or at the
Okay.
last budget meeting, whatever. So we're above that, but we're still in compliance with our fund balance policy because we know in 23.
No, we're
that
building
we're-
up to be
we're
able to
building
have the
up to
money.
be able to
Right,
bring it
and
down.
that's what I want us to do, I just.
Right.
Yeah, there were just a couple of them that still are historically out of whack. They've been out
Okay.
of whack and we've got to either
Yep.
clean them out or do something to use it up or just, wait till the clean out's needed.
Okay,
So the other new report, Lindsay,
Yeah.
is up on the screen here so that Kathy can also see it, is the new system report.
It is. So this is the Onanda cabin rental sales for the month of July. So you can see the breakdown there. Which for July, we had $13,861 worth of cabin rentals, which is pretty good. If you scroll down, you can also break it up by pavilion and building rental sales for the month of July also. So that brought in, what's that, 5,000, over 5,000?
1,500.
Yeah.
This is the cool one.
This is awesome. So this is our occupancy percentage report just for July. So there was actually a couple days in July that we had 100% of our cabins rented. So this is a great indication to show the usage of our parks, but it's also great for next year for planning purposes on staffing needs. And it's a great report that I can start using just to continue to improve.
And is this coming out of that new software?
It is,
Oh, very
yeah,
nice.
it's amazing.
And then Lindsay, have we ever considered like leaving a survey in the cabin to get feedback from people who stay there, maybe
Oh, yeah.
even on maintenance issues, or like when I'm in a hotel room and something's loose, I'm always going down to the desk and going, I know you can't be in every room, but here, this is loose, that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we were to leave something like that,
Yeah.
and some people might fill it out, some people won't, but I just feel like it would be a good way for
I think
your
that's a
team
great
to be
idea.
aware of what's going
Just
on.
get feedback, what's good, what we can
Yeah,
work
yeah.
on.
Is there anything that needs fixing that you notice that we
Yeah.
not want to get to or?
Well, the
Yeah.
Parks Committee has been talking about hopefully doing
QR
some of the
codes.
QR codes where people could scan it and then do it electronically.
Oh,
and
yeah,
stuff,
you
so.
electronic people.
Yeah. You know, I wonder, I had to look it up because I knew I'd calculated it out, but hotels generally use 60% for occupancy. That's a benchmark for them. 28 days, we had above 60% occupancy.
Very good.
Yeah.
The new Hilton.
Very busy.
Very
And we're
busy.
still getting lots of phone calls.
Well, it's a beautiful park and
It
it's
is.
wonderful that people can stay there and have a, you know.
Yeah, and this really gives us meat to justify the usage too of the parks. This is data.
Mhm.
And we
Oh, yeah,
have-
remember
yeah.
the people who
Because
are
we're
saying our
always
parks are not busy enough?
Underutilized.
We don't need
Yeah.
another park because our parks are not busy.
Just not my backyard.
Well, but I
Yeah.
also think that usage is up with the new system because it links with like Airbnb and
Because it's easier,
VRBO
right.
A
and
lot more
that kind of
exposure.
stuff. So it gives us greater, so like even, isn't that how the guy from Hawaii found us?
A guy from Hawaii?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
Doug
been
and I
there
were
several weeks.
Yes.
touring around last
Yes.
Friday and we went up, all the way up, you know, looking at the cabins, and there's a guy up there and waving to us, and he came down to the truck. We started talking. I asked, I said, where are you from? He said, Hawaii. What are you doing here? He said, well, is he had some friend in Hawaii. He was tired of paying taxes. He worked on the pipeline in Alaska for years. And he lived in Alaska. And he had a friend in Hawaii. He was tired of paying taxes. His friend says, hey, you come over here. And he said, I got some land. You put a cabin or something up.
Squat.
That's what he's doing. He said, I went to Home Depot and got a shed. And he said, I put a window in it. And he said, I lived right on the beach. He said, but he'd been in the army. He was stationed at Fort Drum way back. This guy was,
Very
Oh,
interesting
Brandon,
character, huh?
I said, how'd you find it? He said, well, I used to drive past the Finger Lakes all the time. I thought I'd like to stay there sometime. He said, I just found it, you know. He said, I'm coming back. Well, he wanted to extend.
He
He wanted
has.
to
Yes.
extend for
Oh,
another
he
month.
has, yeah.
Was he
But he
able to get
couldn't.
something?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
He
yeah.
could- Yeah, he said he wanted to stay, but he couldn't because it was already rented again.
Ah.
So
But
he
he
said, I'll
had
be
to
back
skip a
next
day.
year, though.
He had to skip one day. He had to find accommodations for
Oh.
one night, but we were able to.
Slept in the
Oh, yeah, so he's back down there.
Mhm.
But the last thing he said to us is, don't tell anybody about this
Yeah.
place. I like it, and I don't want more people here.
Ah.
He's a
Okay.
character.
Well, that's really nice.
And we
Anyway,
have
some new reports.
several reservations for next year already.
Great.
So the normal people that book year after year.
This makes me think, one of the things that the events committee wanted me to check in with you guys was, do you have any strong feelings about Halloween at Onanda, Terry?
I have a strong feeling.
No, strong feelings about, I'll tell you, there are people on the committee that are really concerned for their own health and things like that. They're also concerned about having a lot of kids in the place and being a super spreader. You know, and so we kind of put off making a decision towards the end of the month. But they wanted to get feedback, and Kathy, they're looking for, you know, town board, if the town board has a direction for them, they wanted me to ask you today, so.
I mean, personally, I think it's going to be just like before. It's going to depend on week by week, day by day. I know with the schools, it's day by day, you know, seeing how the numbers are going up. I'm sure you're all seeing that. So if things are good, I think we go for it. If things are, I mean, that's not really direction for you though, but that's kind of,
No, I know,
Where-
that's
how
pretty
I'm
much
seeing
where
it.
we are right now. We're kind of like in a wait and see pattern.
What are the plans? What is the special events committee thinking of
Well,
doing?
The Halloween at Onanda has been fairly standard for the last couple of years. You know, there's the local groups, we're putting out a note to them to ask them if they would participate if we're holding it, because there may be groups that are saying, hey, we're not doing that in this, you know, pandemic kind of timing or whatever.
Mhm.
And so we're checking in on that, and then it would just be, you know, the cabins again. Hopefully the bubbles, hopefully the aerial adventures. I mean, we're thinking about if aerial adventures we might mandate that if you're gonna use it, you have to have a little hand wash station. They have to wash their hands and they have to wear a mask while they're doing it, you know, something like that, where we're kind of, you know, establishing some rules. Nobody has to do any of these things. So, you know, we can make any rules
yeah.
we want,
Well, it'd be voluntary.
right?
People go if they want to, don't go if
They
they don't
don't, yeah,
want.
you don't want to wear a mask, you don't want to wash your hands. don't go on it, that's fine.
Are you gonna do
Okay.
like the crafts in that one building again?
Well, the crafts are in the library, so we'll find out what the library has to say, but see, so little, I mean, we certainly set up the place, we have lots of decorations we're coordinating it, we usually had some food, we're thinking about like, what could we do fairly safely in the way of food? But
But we've been doing that stuff all summer long with our date programs that have been operating, so I mean.
Yeah,
it's-
yeah. No, I know, and numbers were nice and low, and if they start to grow like the rest of the country, maybe, that's the concern. I mean, there's
No, if it had to
definitely
be-
some people
if
who
it
are
had to
worried.
be canceled, it would have to be canceled.
Yeah, and I
I'd
think
I'd
the
do
people,
it.
yeah, so I feel like people don't want to put in a ton of energy planning something that'll be canceled at the last minute.
Yeah, but
But
Maybe it's scaled back a little
Yeah,
bit, maybe
exactly.
it's the more like the trick or treating, the traditional trick or treating.
Kinda like what we did
Like the first
The
year.
first year.
The
Yeah.
first year where we just had the cabins and there
Yeah.
was, I don't know if there was really anything in, I think there was refreshments in.
there was the
Gorham,
cabins, the bubbles, and the refreshments,
And that was
yeah.
it, yeah. I mean,
I think that was even.
the
a
fire department
pavilion.
was there. The fire
Yeah.
department came
Yeah.
down, Cheshire did, but we didn't have the aerial photo, the aerial.
Yeah,
finding
adventure,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so I mean,
So right now, we're checking in with the other people who support us, because so little of it is really the town doing it, but more the,
it's more of a community.
Coordination.
Groups.
Yeah, your volunteers.
yeah. So,
Engaged
anyway.
in there.
I would
Alright.
say whatever, I don't feel, whatever is safe, that's all, which I'm sure everyone feels the same way.
Yeah,
If we feel like it's good to go, I support it. If I don't have an independent, I don't have an independent thought on this, just like, who knows how things are gonna be then. I hope we can have it, and I would support anything we can do to have it, because I want these kids to get back to their lives. So if that helps your direction, then that's my position on it.
yeah, you guys sound like we are, like waiting and seeing in a lot of ways, but.
But
okay.
I think you have to keep moving forward with planning, because otherwise it's not gonna happen. 'Cause it
Oh,
does
yeah,
take
that's
a
why
long
we're
time.
reaching out to those groups already, and see what can happen. Okay, so next meeting, do we want to talk about how do we use the funds? Do we want to come, maybe Terry brings some ideas from,
Well, we'll talk to
Yeah.
Greg tomorrow
Yeah,
and
it sounds like you'll have some follow-up. from
take a
the
look at
meeting with
the,
Greg.
get the Cheshire report out again and
Yep.
ask Greg to give us put $1 million into it, turn the handle on the crank and see what it says with the best information we have available now that prices are up. And consider that they're gonna stay up. That might drive us in another direction, so. But
So
we
what's
are
it-
right now actively working on County Road 28, so I mean, that was number 3 in the pecking order. in that
yeah, so we have a
report,
couple different things, which is
Yeah.
good to have a
They
few.
can
to
look at all of them. Well,
right.
we did get a request from Louis Loy yesterday, to take another look at Andrews Park and Route 21. Where's Lou live? Well, he lives out on 21 out there.
Yeah, very close to it. I don't know that it would extend to help him, but it's
Oh.
close.
He nailed me.
He's gotta move
yesterday.
closer. Anyway, oh,
All right,
Yeah.
guys, this is
All
what
right.
is waiting for me.
Nice.
So as much as I love you all, I'm
Yeah.
Bye, Kathy.
Enjoy, bye.
Bye.
Have fun. See you Monday.
So do you want to have it next week, or do you
Yeah, we
need
could meet
longer
on-
to work on that?
I mean, we'll have a better idea maybe tomorrow.
oh, yeah, let's plan on
Okay,
it.
so we
yeah.
should plan on having,
Yeah.
just starting kind
Yeah.
of the dialogue, maybe see if there's numbers we should run through or anything like that.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that works for me. So anything else for today? We can adjourn today and talk to everybody next week.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I'm gonna go up and hopefully get a copy of the agenda.